Okay, Pat and Louise are there, I believe, behind the black screen. So it's 11:03. I'll call the meeting to order. You should have all received a copy of the minutes. Are there any additions or deletions to the minutes?
No.
Hearing none, I would. Oh, Joe.
There was something at the very end where she said, I think she was sort of confused about Pat, whether it was Pat or me, moved to adjourn the meeting. It said Pat, Bo, Joe. So.
Oh yeah, I see that now.
And then they mentioned Stan Dimog or Dimong.
Yep.
So, I mean, with those corrections made, that would be fine.
Okay, so I'm assuming it's Pat Bruff moved to adjourn the meeting, seconded by Stan Diamond.
Yep.
So Louise, you can make those corrections.
You're just
I'll tell you, it was my first one. By the time I got to adjournment, I was like adjourned. I was younger. I'll fix it.
Thanks for doing that. The only comment that came up, Louise, is we wondered if you might have an opportunity to get them out to the board just a couple days earlier before the meeting.
Absolutely.
So just that folks might not have seen it at 10 o'clock last night or might not have seen it this morning before the meeting. So even if it comes out a few days before the meeting, that would be helpful. So yeah. Do I have a motion? Did I have a motion? I don't think I had a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, so Pat, Bro, Joe. Pat Bruff.
I second that.
Okay, so that's Pat Bruff made the motion and Joe seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Public speak, Brendan. Is there anyone out there?
As of right now, no. We don't have anybody from the public present.
Perfect. That leads us to the financial report.
Yeah, so when I submitted this, the auditor hadn't given me the expense control report, so I got it the following day. Can you see that, this picture on my screen here?
Cannot.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, you guys can't?
No, cannot.
Okay, all right. Let me...
You're not screen sharing.
Yeah, 1 second. There we go. Can you see that now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that I didn't obviously get that into the city clerk with my original agenda report, but that's it right there for April. If you guys have any questions, otherwise we can move on. But
so if I'm reading it correctly, Brendan, with 2 months to go, you have approximately 33,000 in the tank.
Yep.
And all that's good with you. Good. I don't know. Doesn't look like we actually vote to approve that. It's just a presentation from the director. So, okay. Highland Valley, Pat, anything to report?
No, we've been we meet in a couple of weeks again. Just the rotation kind of works out that way. A lot of internal things that they're kind of working on. We listened to different presentations from folks that are part of that organization. So I don't have anything to really add. I know I keep saying that every week or every meeting, but there is I'm trying to do better at trying to pull stuff from that meeting, but I know that there's a lot of internal things that are going on right now that wouldn't really pertain to this meeting. So for now, I'm going to stick with that.
I think that's fine, Pat. I think what we're looking for is when it sounds like something big is going to happen that might affect, us here in Easthampton. That's kind of when the board's looking for a heads up. So okay. I think that's fine. Thank you very much for continuing to do that. Senior tax work-off program.
Yeah.
Joe, any updates, or Brendan?
Yeah. I was just talking to Joe about this before the meeting began. But the mayor's office should, if they haven't already, released a press release. I sent over a write-up for their office, and so that should be getting out to all the newspapers. A Facebook post has gone up. Easthampton Media is just fixing the link, the URL link that I had originally put up there. Before we could submit everything over to the IT director, we just had it as the www.easthamptonma.gov. But now it has a very specific URL. So I just asked if Easthampton Media could go in and change that because it shows up on the screen. It's a very basic PSA, but it'll be running on public access for the majority of time that we're waiting for applications to come in, which I didn't make a hard deadline, but I asked that, anything beyond July 30th, we're going to have to review and see. It's the same language that we used initially, which is that we'll review the applications for completeness, and if there are if there are any positions left over, that we'll gladly place people if they're a good fit. So that information should be getting out there, and of course, if any of you guys want to share that on social media as well, drop it in any community pages. More the better.
Pat, you know more about Facebook than I do. I did see that post that Brendan put out on Facebook, but it didn't look like it was something I could share. Was I not doing something right?
Probably not.
Thanks. It was actually
operator.
It actually, yeah, thanks, Chuck.
Let me try and find it. Let me just try and.
It wasn't under Brendan's name, I don't believe.
What page was it on?
It was underneath the East. So as a business page, I can't share it, right, to like a community page. So it was underneath the Easthampton Council on Aging and Enrichment Center. And then people that I know shared it.
Yeah.
Pat, I'm sure, well, you had to have been one of them, I'm assuming.
Oh, I'm sure I did.
Yeah.
When was that? Oh, here it is right here, May 19th.
Yeah.
So,
so the only one I saw, Brendan, was one that I think it looked like your wife might have put it out.
Yeah. I asked her to share it the instant that I put it out. Because again, I'm obviously restricted from sharing it on certain pages, being a business page. But
so in order to share it, I would have.
Okay, it's shareable from the the Council on Aging page. So go there and you can share from there.
All right.
Yeah.
Because people will have shared it to a lot of pages, which are closed groups.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. So anybody who wants to do that, that'd be really helpful.
I just shared it to the good news page. So.
Yeah, I think, the more, I think sometimes it's like you got to just keep on flushing it into the system, every every week for that matter, just to keep that in people's minds. But we do have some people that said that I've already had a few people call me and say that they're interested. So we'll see what happens. But, and again, this will be on public access. So for those who don't have the internet or, for whatever reason, don't have social media, they can at least find this on the public app or on the press release from there. So.
Maybe Brendan Stan knows this. I mean, a lot of people watch the city council meetings and the school committee meetings. Mm-hmm. Is there any opportunity to have that PSA pop up like a minute or two before those meetings start?
Sure. I will contact Easthampton Media about doing that.
Great.
So just those two meetings?
Yeah, I think that's the majority of the meetings that yeah, I mean, all the other
times, yeah,
like planning board and things like that, they don't really necessarily tune in unless they have a dog in the fight.
Right.
But I think city council and school committee.
We also took that same Facebook post, because I'm trying to have consistency with language here. We put that into our newsletter, so that's also going out to the community. And then the press release, the same thing. I'm trying to make it as cohesive as possible. We don't want any misinterpretation of stuff that was getting sent out there. That's why I was kind of perseverating on some of the stuff, because I wanted to make sure that we didn't accidentally send out, information that would trip up the application process or anybody who was interested in participating in the program.
I will also share it out on the Easthampton Neighbors page.
Okay.
Great.
Oh, I just did, Sam.
Excuse me?
I just did, sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
It's kind of reflex.
All right.
Great. Joe, anything from your end on the senior tax work-off?
The only thing we were contacted by the by the city clerk, who's also involved with this, the rail trail committee. And there was some discussion that at some point in time, right now, maintenance of that, well, the first thing is it's the city that owns the rail trail, okay? And they've had an arrangement with that bike committee where the committee has done work in terms of maintaining the trail, and they've been reimbursed by by Parks and Rec. And apparently the members of that committee are aging out in terms of they're getting older, and their ability to engage in that sort of maintenance is sort of falling, maybe more difficult for them to do now. And so at some point, you know, it was suggested that, you know, the Parks and Rec may have to take formal, you know, responsibility for doing the maintenance on that. And the city clerk thought it might be a good idea if Parks and Rec could, you know, sponsor a position which was, you know, primarily but not exclusively going to do maintenance on the rail trail. So I've worked with those guys to draft the position description, and it's being reviewed right now. So
Great. I guess my only question on that, Joe, would be does the Park and Rec have to some way, shape, or form officially take over the bike path before they can assign the work on it to some individuals? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, we haven't, I mean, I didn't want to approach Park and Rec until we had, you know, a pretty firm position description as far as what we wanted the volunteer to do. And since, you know, at least for 3 years, you know, they could get the position, you know, without having to, you know, fund it.
Right.
And it would seem that might be a way to ease Parks and Rec into doing this stuff.
From what Joe is saying, it sounds like it's their responsibility already, and the committee's just been taking it on. And
Okay, good.
Yeah, well said, Chuck.
Yeah, good point. Okay. Great. Thanks for all the work too behind the scenes, you guys, with that program.
nice job.
Okay, Brendan, Executive Director's report.
All right. So obviously, as I had mentioned in my email, I wanted to take the majority of today's meeting just to focus on what it means to reopen. And so we're in the beginning stages of, well, I'm in the beginning stages of creating a plan so that our participants understand what limitations we have, because as you'll see here, the May 29th lift that's happening on a lot of the remaining COVID restrictions leave it kind of wide open. And as I also had mentioned in my email, there's no sector-specific guidelines for senior centers. We're just not bunched up. So there's, you know, human service agencies that kind of get blended in, and that's one title of a sector-specific guideline, which we are. But, you know, I've been back and forth with Bree on this, and we're in this position where I don't think this May 29th lift here was originally supposed to happen on August 1st. And so we were talking about this August 1st timeline about a week and a half ago, when all of a sudden this new date just popped up out of nowhere. And I feel like I don't want people, you know, here at the Council on Aging to be pressured to develop a plan instantaneously based off this new May 29th order. You know, we've got some things in place, as I mentioned in previous meetings, the ionizers to help filtrate, filter the air, and, you know, some plexiglass. But I think with this particular order, we could be leaving ourselves open and potentially get someone sick here at the center. And this would be one thing if we were dealing with a human service agency that didn't have the majority of people being 55 and up, you know, or people with compromised immune systems. That you know, a lot of that stuff falls hand in hand with our population. So I'm advocating that we still stay on the August 1st deadline. And that allows us to at least develop a plan that is going to be safe for us to reopen. And it may not be perfect, but I think we got a lot of calls about the May 29th order, and people are saying, oh, okay, so you're going to open your doors. And I just don't think it's appropriate, given our population, to do that. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff to consider. But certainly, as you can see here, I'm sharing this, right? Yeah, okay. That all industries will be permitted to be open. Well, that's all well and good. And there's going to be some remaining face covering requirements with public transportation or private transportation for that matter, or facilities housing the vulnerable populations, which we don't technically house, you know, seniors, but I think, and this is going to be another thing I advocate for, is that we still have a mask order in the center here. I know that what's being put out there right now by CDC is that, you know, people, if they're vaccinated, can go without face masks. I don't even want to go there. And I think that's one standard that we could hold. Vaccine cards is a tricky situation, and Stan had emailed me about that, or we were kind of on the topic about vaccination cards. I'm not sure where the mayor will stand policy-wise, but I know some towns have been met with resistance. And I think the argument is that some people may not have gotten the vaccine for medical reasons or religious reasons. And so then you run into this situation where you may be turning people away based on, you know, one of those two. And I feel like that could land us in a world of heat. But again, I'm gonna, you know, be asking the mayor about that. But I know that Hadley was originally, because they've been open in the last couple of months, and I think initially they had started off requiring a copy of a vaccination card for people who wanted to participate in recreational activities. As far as people who need transportation services or social services, you didn't have to have a vaccination card. But now the town has reversed that, and they're saying, well, this isn't fair to some segments of the population. So again, I'm leaning more towards the idea that we continue to have a mask mandate of some level here for the city department. And that if the mayor isn't interested in pursuing the vaccination card, well, then we'll just have to kind of go off the universal precaution, you know, that people will have to continue to wear masks unless they're outside, where I feel like that's pretty limited risk and we can separate people for sure. Like our Tai Chi class in Nonotuck Park, we can create well over 14 feet worth of distance, and we're outside where we're not confined and all of that. So I think that's the only time that I've been okay with the idea of people not wearing their face masks. But when we talk about bringing people back into the building, I think we need to hold a standard. Sure. I don't want anybody, you know, coming into the building, pick up potentially a virus, and then end up going home and then, you know, being really sick. I just don't want that weighing on anybody here. And I feel like it's at this point, we've all gotten pretty used to masks. And it just may be that for the first several months that we've reopened, that's the way it's going to be. Yeah, Stan.
So in order to use the exercise room, we have to submit doctor's notes.
Yeah.
Can we make a request that in order to come into the center, they either have to show a vaccine card or they have to bring a note from their doctor about why they can't get vaccinated? Would that make it fairer?
What was that?
Would that make it fairer?
I mean, it might make it a little bit more evened out, but I think, you know, again, people also may raise questions about us prying. Well, I mean, we have to do a waiver anyway. I mean, so it's not like we're not getting medical information from people. And while it's relatively minor what we're getting from the doctor's offices, it's still medical information that's being shared. So that is a possibility.
I don't know how to work.
Brendan, I guess the question, like, I know that we as a business here in town, we're not allowed to ask anybody. I mean, I can't ask anybody coming in the building. And I kind of assumed that you guys fell under that category, but I'm willing to support whatever you want to do. I mean, if you want to continue to have them wear masks, I'll fully support that. It sounds like a logical thing to do. You know, will it turn some folks off? You know, maybe, but I think for safety reasons, as for that, you know, segment, I think it makes some sense, even if you do it just for a couple more months, just to make sure. I'm just concerned for the city and or anybody else, but specifically, the organization. Like we can't ask people for whether they're vaccinated or not. I can't see why it would be okay for you to do it either. But you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, and this is the constant thing that I'm running into, and this is why I kind of want the city attorney to weigh in on this, because the last thing I want to do is set up, a city department, our city department, from being seen as a department that's discriminating against, certain people,
right?
For whatever reason, why they don't have the vaccine.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It just
right. And again, we run into this idea that someone could say, well, I am highly allergic to a component that's in the COVID vaccine, and I can't get it because it's going to, impact my overall health.
Right.
And so now you're telling me because of my medical condition that now I can't come in.
Right.
Brendan, except there's a huge irony in all of this in that, on May 29th, basically, the state's going to reopen to full capacity. Fenway Park's going to be full. And as it says here, all industries are permitted to open. They're basically doing away with social distancing. And they have one caveat, though. It says, provided you have been vaccinated. However, there's no way, they've admitted this, there's no way to show who has been or who hasn't been. It's going to be the honor system.
Right.
The irony in all of this is the only person at risk is the person who hasn't been vaccinated. Now, I potentially could still catch the virus, but because I've been vaccinated, it's probably going to be the equivalent of getting a bad cold. The person who might lie and say, I'm coming in without a mask and I'm coming into this crowd and I haven't been vaccinated, but I'm going to make believe I have been, that's actually the person at risk because they have a chance of catching the full-blown virus having not been vaccinated. So,
well, I think there's also there's the people who are on immunosuppressive drugs and people like transplant recipients. There's still research out there, but yeah, I mean, overall, I get what you're saying by the idea that, if someone isn't vaccinated, that they're really taking on that chance themselves.
I mean, fast forward to January, and let's just say come January that we're wide open and the world's not wearing masks. It's still going to sort of be the honor system, I assume. Stan?
I see the problems here, but can we give them an alternative where if they were not vaccinated, that they have to bring in a recent test, a negative test result? So they can do an either or and still participate in our programs. But what I'm concerned about is as we are different from a regular business because our population is more vulnerable than patrons in a regular business overall. And we also, I assume, will want to do contact tracing if somebody does come down. If we find out somebody does come down and we have to notify everyone else who might have been there that hasn't been vaccinated or even has been vaccinated, we need to get this information in order to do that.
I have a feeling, Stan, I don't know the specifics, and I haven't read the entire directive from the governor, but I'm fairly certain that's all going away on May 29th. Wow. If somebody comes down with COVID at Fenway Park, they're not going to contact trace, and they have no way of knowing who's vaccinated and who's not.
Agreed.
I keep using Fenway Park as an example, but I think all that testing they're closing down testing sites everywhere. So I think a lot of this is just going away. I don't mean to shift gears here too quickly, but Brendan, while the governor made this directive, isn't it still up to local cities and towns? And I'm wondering, has the mayor come out with anything yet about what her plans are for Easthampton?
I think what's ultimately going to boil down to is that I'm going to have to submit a plan that's going to be reviewed by the Board of Health and the mayor. And if they have any issues with it, or if there's stuff that isn't in there that they want to have included, then that's going to be on the mayor and the Board of Health. And I think that's kind of in the next week or two, I'm going to be submitting something to Bree just for her to review it. But yeah, it is very much. And when I contacted the Massachusetts Council on Aging, because again, we don't have a specific sector guideline for COAs. That's exactly what the Massachusetts Council on Aging told me. They said, it's really going to be between the COA, the Board of Health, and the mayor to make these determinations. And I know that the mayor has taken a pretty cautious approach to all of this, and I don't think she's just going to sign off on a plan that I submit to her without her going over it with a fine comb. But I think there is obviously, this pressure now to get things moving. And I don't think that's going to necessarily fall on us. But I think, the rest of the, society is moving along at this pace. And I think, city government can only hold off so long before people are saying, well, what's going on here? Why isn't the city, reopening with the rest of the state? But
So let's just back up for one moment. How do the rest of the members of the board feel about the two components of this that Brendan threw out about opening August 1st and still requiring a mask when you enter the building? How do you all feel about those two components? Stan?
I agree with both.
Okay.
I agree too. I mean, Brendan is there every day. And I feel like he's making the right decision based on the information that he has and what he feels is best for the organization. So I think it's a good idea. I'll only backtrack a smidge in that comment, and I thought maybe July, only because it would give you a little more of the summer. But I'm very comfortable with August. If August is what you need, then I'd be comfortable with that.
yeah, I think one of the things we fall into with July is that technically within the next couple of weeks, we need to submit our newsletter over to the publishers. So that's another reason why I'm kind of like backing it out for communication purposes.
Yeah.
And I think, August 1st was where we were originally set at. And I don't think I'm going to get any resistance on pushing it back that far, because I think that's what we originally had planned on. But I think this gives us time to at least focus in on some of these things. So that way, if the mayor has questions or the Board of Health has questions for us, that we're all at least on the same page about, some of these, bigger pieces. And, but I don't know if we should just go down and I'll talk about some of my recommendations.
Brendan, I just want to let others jump in on that question.
I comment. My iPad is not charging, so you might lose me. So, but my thought is this: the governor's directive is allowing business to open doesn't mean they have to. So my feeling is we should defer to whatever Brendan's recommendations are, or whatever recommendations that he gives as an opening plan that the city ultimately approves.
Right.
Perfect.
Yes, I agree. And I like the idea of keeping the mask.
Yeah. And we'll see when we get down here. There are things that I would like to explore just in the very first few months that we're in this reopening phase. So if people are okay, I'll skip down to that next section. And these are by no means final. And in fact, after submitting this, I went around and assessed the main floor again. And I was thinking maybe we could get away with some, increasing the group size for non-exercise based classes or events. So those, I think this is going to be one of those things that we have to flush out. But
Brendan, just real quick, I know Joe had his hand up.
Oh, sorry.
No, I would, the 2 points that Brendan has made, I would support those as well.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Okay, Brendan.
All right. So when I talked to Bree, the idea was that she doesn't want us doing congregate meals here, which I'm A-okay with. I don't think there's any reason to disrupt
No, we're not ready for that.
meals. So I think that's something that's going to be supported through the city for sure, right off the bat. So that was one thing that she had mentioned. She doesn't want to see us in a place where we're doing congregate meals here at the center. So that will continue to be happening out at 50 pace, and that's not going to change. I don't think we're quite there yet to bring in people close together where they're going to be eating right next to each other. If those people, say, oh, well, we can already do this in restaurants, that's fine. Go ahead and do whatever you got to do. I think, people should go out and go to restaurants, but I just don't think we need to invite that into the center yet. And I agree with Bree on that. But anyway, she had thought that I should base my plan off of orders that were put forward by the governor back on March 18th, and then also this COVID-19 specific standards for sectors not otherwise addressed, right? Because again, we don't have a specific guideline put out there for senior centers. So that was her recommendation. So you can see there's a lot in here. And one of the things right off the bat, right? So it talks about each enterprise must monitor customer entries and exits, limit occupancy at all times. So technically, some of the standards that Bree wants me to go off of, we could see here in one of the highlighted sections that we can have up to 10 persons per 1,000 square foot of accessible space. So right now on our main floor, we're dealing with just slightly over 5,000 square feet. In no way do I think we're going to be inviting 50 people in here. And in fact, the max that I would probably go for, again, and this is after I had submitted this, and doing a quick walk around the building, I think my approach would be no more than 20 participants in the building on the main floor here for an event or activity that isn't exercise based. So I think that's something that we could manage. We would just remove some of the furniture, but certainly we would be going below this 10 person per square 1,000 foot. And I'm okay with being conservative on my approach to this because I don't want, the one time that we would really hit 50 people here is if we did a big lunch. And again, we're not doing those here for the foreseeable future. So we can, easily keep those numbers, 20 people is something that's manageable. And my case would be is that we have to do pre-registration for every activity or event, like we kind of do already, and that we avoid walk-ins because that's where we have the unknowns. So my senior center software, the program that we use to kind of track statistics, included a contact tracing element in their programming. So if we pre-register everybody, and I won't be able to do this when the class is running, but certainly after the class ends, I plan on locking the doors to the senior center. So what it will be is that people have to pre-register, come in, do the class, and once they're done, that they'll leave, and we'll lock the doors, giving us time to potentially clean down surfaces. And I don't know, I've got to touch base with Greg because currently we only have 2 hours of custodial service here. So I don't think we're in any position unless they plan on increasing our hours. And of course, I've worked in like a sanitation, or a sanitizer type position into our senior tax work-off program to help us out with these things. But right now, as it stands, without, the senior tax work-off program being introduced or anything like that, we're dealing with 2 hours of custodial care at the center. So in my opinion, if that's where we're staying at, I'm locking those doors in between classes. We need time to be able to break down or, clean off equipment. And it's insane. If we're only dealing with that amount of time, I really have to make sure that we have adequate time to transition the next group in.
Brendan?
Yes.
Doesn't the Friends help with that, cleaning the center?
They do.
They were paying somebody to do it, weren't they?
They were, yes. They were, and they still are. But I think it's going to require even more. Even if we had back to where we were previously before, because we did have a position through the DPW that funded 10 hours a week. And then we had the Friends supporting some, a few extra hours a week. So that put us at somewhere between 10 to 13. Which was fine, I think, pre-COVID, but now it's, people are going to be questioning what we're doing, to protect folks and whether or not we're sanitizing, the area and cleaning the area enough. And I just feel like that's where we're going to have to reduce the amount of classes coming inside, maybe a couple of classes a week to start off with in August and test the waters there, and then eventually grow once we know what our cleaning situation is and how that's going to play out.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So yeah, I again, every time, while Bree is suggesting these things, I want to go below what these recommendations are for capacity. Oh, Louise, go ahead.
Louise, you're on mute.
Okay. Maybe you're planning to get to this, but I should not be on mute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, my iPad isn't. Under all this, what's the status of the exercise room and those classes?
Yeah, that I'm going to get to, and it's something that I didn't include in here because I wanted to take a look, because there is a fitness center guideline that Bree had sent me. My thought is that for the fitness room, we have enough space, because right now the way the standards are set is that without barriers, you have to have people separated 14 feet and be wearing a mask. I think we have well over 14 feet if we go from one length of the gym to the other. So my thought was to have only 2 different households at a time in a 45-minute block. And that might, again, and that's something I'm going to have to look at, and it's something I'm going to submit to Bree to see if she's okay with that. But those were my thoughts on the fitness center.
But you're not opening it August 1st, or you just don't know yet?
I would like to have it open by August 1st, because the fitness room is something that people have been asking me about. And if I can accommodate that, and Bree and the mayor sign off on allowing 2 separate households. So this is where this is where I'm going to ask Bree, because say if we have a married couple, because we often do have married couples that come in and work out, they're obviously part of the same household, whether or not we'd be allowed to go up to 3 if we have 2 people from one household and then a separate household of 1 person in the gym at the same time for that 45-minute window. But again, the reason why I've created a 45-minute window is to allow for, and this is a thing that I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to have to rely on the people who are using the fitness center to wipe down all surfaces.
They do that anyway.
Yeah, that's a reasonable request.
Yeah.
It is. It's just because if that's 45-minute windows, I'm not going to expect staff to be going in there every 45 minutes to wipe down surface areas. People are going to have to take that on themselves. Just that alone would be a lot of different points of the day where people would be cleaning. And also, we do have the ionizer in there, which I'm hoping after 15 minutes will clear the air. So we do have that set up just for the fitness room, because obviously people are going to be exerting themselves in the fitness room.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what my thoughts are. I don't know if any of you guys have any opinions on that, but.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yep, sounds good.
Yep.
All right. So let me just skip down a little bit. So I just wanted to get into, there's a lot of stuff in this document, and I'm not sure how much you guys have had a chance to look at. And I only pulled segments of the recommendations that had come from these sector-specific guidelines. This isn't the total document, so it's pieces of it that I thought were applicable to us. And there's a couple of things in here about operations, and it may be something that we have to do right now. During COVID, staff have been here during Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. Now, if there's a class that's really popular, or we find that there's waiting lists on an event or activity, we may have to look at extending hours and shifting around staff to make those accommodations, which isn't too far out of the ordinary considering how pre-COVID there were extended hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So between myself and my full-time outreach coordinator, we would work 11 to 7 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, allowing for a little bit of extra room. And initially, as you guys probably remember, those hours were created in hopes of capturing people who may still have been at work and couldn't attend some of our activities and events. So we created these outside hours, which I have zero issues with going back to that system where we have, extended hours, maybe a couple days out of the week. We can do that. Louise?
No, I have nothing.
Oh, your hand is still up. I'm not sure. Well, anyway. So yeah, those are things that I think we can do to accommodate those events or activities that just have a wait list, or we just feel like it needs to run more than once a day. We can look at those. And then the other thing is, while I, and this is something else, but the self-screening, I think when we do a pre-registration for classes, we'll do a verbal COVID screening for folks. I don't know where we stand on the thermometer. I could certainly hold that standard with staff when we start to bring people back into the building. We could probably make that a policy with the city workers. But as far as temp checking every person that comes in, I'm not sure how that's going to play out. Stan.
So aside from the air purifiers that you were talking about, have you thought about in a space like the recreation room or the kitchen of installing UV lighting to sanitize the room, so that, because those exercise machines have a lot of nooks and crannies that are going to be very, very difficult to clean thoroughly between uses, and maybe a light-based sanitizing system might be easier in certain situations. We would have to be careful about putting it on a key switch, because you don't want someone accidentally turning it on when there are people in the room.
Right. I haven't thought about UV light, to be honest with you. I'm sure, I know they make those handheld UV lights, but, again, I don't know, like, as far as installing, are you talking about, like, mounted?
Yeah, ceiling mounted, right, that would do the whole room. And you have a key switch outside the room and also ways to shut off any, shades over the windows and stuff, so anyone walking past the window from outside wouldn't be affected by it and stuff like that. Because it typically won't hurt much on your body, but it's dangerous to the eyes.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the efficacy is of UV light on the virus. I just don't know, to be honest with you. So if someone did know and then we felt like it was a worthwhile investment, we could take a look at that.
Yeah, I'm not certain that all of the gyms around that reopened a month or two ago, I think they're just doing the basic wiping down of the equipment. Again, I haven't been, I didn't want to say this because Pat will say something. I haven't been in a gym in a while, so I'm not sure what they're doing.
I can tell you, at least at the YMCA, I had talked to the director there. I go to the Northampton YMCA, and they were saying that they're leaving some of the barriers up just because of their folks feel pretty safe with them. But right now, as long as they can provide that 14 feet worth of distance, and that's based on current orders, not what's happening on the 29th, of course, but if they can maintain that 14 feet of distance now and people are masked, then they can run a class or have a workout room set up.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, and some of the stuff is pretty standard. I feel like right now, as far as monitoring, anytime someone ends up getting sick here, a lot of this stuff is just common knowledge that should be reported. And we have city policies that are set up for staff about, making sure that you are monitoring your system, or you're monitoring your signs and symptoms, before coming into work. I don't think it's going to be a problem with staff, but I think more or less the question that I have to, kind of figure out is where we stand with our participants. I think certainly a verbal COVID screening would be done at each pre-registration, and it doesn't take much time because we did it with transportation. It's just a matter of going through a couple of questions, obviously pointing out some of the, major signs and symptoms of COVID, and we can at least hold that part, the screening, the verbal screening part, and that can be easy to manage. But my thing is that, again, pre-registration will absolutely be required. People are not going to be able to walk in here, out of nowhere and participate in the class. Because the thing is, if someone does get sick here, I want to be able to go into our system and quickly track down who it is that, was in whatever class. And we can do that in My Senior Center software. So I think by controlling it that way and making, because originally what we would have is people may have to sign up for a class, but then we would be relying on them to swipe in with their key card to My Senior Center. And I can't tell you how many times people don't swipe that card. So I think we're going to manually register them as we're on the phone, and then we'll also have a paper registration just in case someone forgot for whatever reason to include someone in the software to the group or activity or event, that we have that extra paper trail just to say, oh, okay, we didn't get them on our My Senior Center software, but we do have them signing off on a paper notice, and we'll just have to make sure that instructors and staff are, well, especially staff are present during these events when we first start off, because there could be, and this is the thing I hate to have to get into, but there could be this policing of sorts with people. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of folks who are going to be pulling their masks down to talk, because on top of all the noise that we already have in the center, the ionizers, the main unit that we have on our main floor, kicks off additional noise with the fan. So we already had a bunch of background noise bleeding in to the center, but now we have this additional fan coming down on top of that. So I'm sure there's people who are going to come in who have hearing issues that are going to probably, and a lot of people do this, and I know we've all seen it, pull down their mask so that someone can see what they're talking about. And I know we're going to have someone there for each one of these events and activities to make sure that, people are, hopefully following our mask mandate of sorts. Let's see here. So again, we already have, I know that and a lot of this, again, comes down to control and pre-registration, but any workers that we have come in that aren't participants, we have them sign off on sheets and stuff like that. That's already there, just in case we do have to have vendors come in and work on parts of the building. Sometimes it's not always easy to schedule, some of these vendors to come in at a specific time. Sometimes we just get last-minute notice and they'll come to our center. So, but we do have an additional sheet for that right now for any vendors who are, working on utilities or whatever the case may be. Sorry, I'm going to skip down here. Okay, so this, I've already kind of touched on a lot of this, and these are just some of my basic recommendations right now. But again, I don't think anything's permanent right now, and it's stuff that I have to work on over the next couple of weeks. For example, again, going back to the participant class, or how many participants we're going to allow in the class, I think I want to modify that. So as you see right here, activities and events will not exceed more than 12 participants at a time. I think we could probably safely do that. Again, if it's a non-exercise class, potentially 20 people. I think that would be fine. But if we start looking at any type of dance class, any type of strength and conditioning classes, like, we'll have to really limit those numbers to probably about 8 or 10 people. And again, we've got to strip all this, furniture out of here and make sure that it's not, there so people can congregate after. Like, really, I want people to come in for the event, and if they're going to socialize, they can socialize outside of the building. And I know that's the opposite of what senior centers are doing, but it's just, we're obviously dealing with time restrictions, and I want to make sure that we're prepared for whatever group may be coming in next. So I don't know if there's anything that you guys can think of that I might be missing right now. Again, we're not doing a huge, hey, we're reopened, come in. That's not the way it's going to be. And I feel like we're going to get a lot of hell for it probably. And that's okay. But my thing is, it's better than what we have now. At least it's a start to something. And at least we have some understanding as to when we're going to reopen. We've been at this now for well over a year and not knowing when it's going to happen. And we've fielded this question numerous times. When are you going to reopen? Why haven't you reopened? And every COA is different. And I just want to point that out. We've talked about this at Massachusetts Council on Aging meetings for Western Mass directors. Hadley has had 2 reopenings and 2 shutdowns. Northampton, they have no idea when they're opening yet, and partially that's because of the clinic that they're running there. But every town it's got different budgets. They've got different staffing, and so I just want to be slow. I think slow and steady will win the race on this, and we should just be as cautious as we can while still allowing some accessibility to the public here in our building.
Brendan, I think when this entire strategy or proposal is put together and finally blessed by Bree and or the mayor, I'm thinking if you put a blurb in the newsletter or wherever you put it, that is just prefaced by, in our efforts to, protect our clientele, or something along the lines of what you said before about the fact that we're dealing with a clientele that is potentially highly susceptible to the virus. I'm not trying to say you have to explain why you're doing all this, but more or less try to have people understand why we're doing all of this, why we're waiting, why we're going to continue to wear masks.
Right.
Because you're going to hear that Fenway Park analogy from everybody, and why can't we do this here at the little old Easthampton COA? So I think a little bit of a preface to it about the why might help people understand. Okay, I get it. But for me personally, anyway, I can't speak for the whole board, but for me personally, when you put together this strategy, this proposal for reopening, I'm going to trust your judgment in all of this. And if you get that blessed by the mayor and Bree, I think you run with it. The only thing I would ask is that if you could share it with the board so that when we meet John Doe on the street and they're asking why, we have all the information at our fingertips to be able to help try to explain it to the average person.
And the other thing I'm happy to do too is to send it out before I even submit it over to Bree, because maybe members of the board have some things that they want to suggest. Louise?
Sure. Louise, you're on mute.
Sorry. I shouldn't take notes at the same time. Agree with all that. My question, I can't remember if you said the last meeting, is outdoor tents. Do we have any? If other buildings are, and where do we stand on that? So there would be more possibility of having even into the fall. Yeah.
So we have a 10 by 30 tent here that we have to set up. I'm going back and forth between the company that sold it to us just because there was beginning stages of rust on some of the poles, and so I have yet to put it up yet because I don't want to set this thing up and then find out that it's not going to withstand the elements. But it is something that we're going to have the DPW help us, because they got to bring some concrete blocks down here to secure the tent, just with all the crazy winds that we've had. But the idea is that we put it on the side parking lot. And even that's kind of tricky because our space here is the back parking lot is uneven. And while we're doing classes out there right now, I would certainly not want an active group, whatever that may be, whether it's dancing or any other type of exercise class, to be working on that pavement, because there is a dip at one point where the water drain is, and I just can see someone, getting hurt out there. So it would only be for classes that are really low key with physical exercise, or just people who are going to be stationary at tables that we have set up.
Makes sense.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because some senior centers have, this, it's a blessing and a curse to be downtown here like this, because there's limited space, but we're right along, everything that's the center of Easthampton. It's just that we've got the garden here, but you can't really do classes out in the garden. There's just no room really.
And Brendan, just back on the proposal you're going to be putting together and sending out to the board, it might be a good idea to just put a timeline, like you want to hear back from us in 48 hours or 3 days or whatever you'd like, just so that, you don't have to wonder if somebody's still going to be getting back to you with some recommendations. Give us like a time limit to get back to you, so because you want to keep moving this forward, obviously.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea, is to set a time frame on that. So just like the agenda question that I put out, I'll just, try to give you guys like at least 48 hours to respond to it. Because again, I'm sure there are going to be plenty of things that every time I think I've covered some area, something else pops up. Like, and I'm questioning, the nuance of all of this is insane, just to think about, this is the most terrifying part. Closing down obviously was weird, but it was easy, right? I mean, that was nothing. But this reopening is going to take a lot of creativity, and it's going to come with some disappointment, I anticipate. But I don't, at this point, I'd rather be cautious than have to have someone walk away from here getting hurt.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any other thoughts or comments? Brendan will be getting back to us with his proposal so that we can weigh in one last time before it goes on to the health department and the mayor for final approval.
Yeah. And then, of course, we'll probably, if we don't have enough room based on advertisement space that's happening in our newsletter, we'll create a flyer that'll go out with every newsletter. Hopefully, and maybe it'll even go out with the July newsletter so people are well prepared. I think that's reasonable, but we'll see, depending on what the mayor and the Board of Health says. And the other thing is, too, I know that City Hall is opening up July 1st, but it was only City Hall that was mentioned, so I haven't heard of any other departments that are off of 50 Payson that are open. I didn't see any mention in the recent press release from the mayor's office about the Council on Aging. So I think we can hold true to the August 1st.
Sounds good. Anything else for Brendan, or Brendan, anything else for us?
No, I mean, I look forward to your input, because I think over time this stuff will change, and I think it's stuff that we'll probably have to discuss as a board. If we continue to see low numbers, what's the next step? Right. How are we going to accommodate people safely at that point? And then hopefully we'll reach a point where we won't have to worry about half of this stuff.
Well, the jury's still out on what happens when cold weather returns and we're all locked up indoors. That to me is the wait and see. That's the true test of what happens with this virus and vaccine, is what happens when we're cooped up again.
I know. I think everything from fall through winter is gonna. We may have to shut down the building again. I don't know. I mean, Certainly it's happened with Hadley, as I mentioned, and it's happened to other centers that have been open during the pandemic. But we'll see.
Okay, if that's it, thank you all very much. Our next meeting is June 15th at 11. And if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
That's Pat. And is there and Stan is seconded. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Brendan, very much. Good job.
Bye now.
See you later, Tom.
Yes, sir. See you later.